Hey everyone, welcome back to the final video of the Casey Neistat modeling series. You know the drill, so like, comment, subscribe, get involved, and we're going to dive right in. So if I zoom in here in Clip Studio, how do I zoom again? Oh my goodness. Okay, so for him, I think what I'm going to start with is just refining the face a little bit, stylizing the face, his nose and everything. I really like what I got in the concept. And then I'm going to refine his hair detailing too with a new brush that I've discovered. And then we're going to add the actual base, the little road base here. So let's dive right into Zbrush. Hope everyone is having a great New Year's. You didn't party too hard. We put the kids to bed at like 9 o'clock. It was awesome. All right, so I think one thing real quick before I jump into the face is I'm going to actually bring his pant legs up to reveal his socks. So that's one thing in the concept too. And I think I scooted those down earlier for durability because his ankles get pretty skinny. And so when you're thinking about, I mean, obviously this isn't like a toy that you're going to play with. This is just like kind of a display piece. So, you know, durability is a concern, especially with the resin, but I think we can push it a little bit further here to just get it in line with our concept. Just rotating around those, make sure that things are looking right. And then I was going to dive into his face. So the biggest things I'm seeing with his face is like his face here, like his mouth might just be like a slit. Like we don't actually have very much like lip detail, so I might kind of subdue the lip detailing. His nose, I think, could be inflated out even a little bit more, just accentuated, and even the crease down the side of his mouth. And then the other thing I was noticing was that the ridge of his ear needs to be inflated out too, and maybe this little bump here can be accentuated. So we're going to start with those, I think. And one way that I like to do like broad detailing, I think I mentioned earlier, is just to step down my subdivisions by hitting Shift D on the keyboard. I'm going to use my H polish and kind of just flatten some of this detail out. And we're going through for, you know, stylized. I have symmetry on right now as well, stepping up a subdivision level. Just kind of going with a more of a, you know, just like a cartoon like little slit for his mouth. Setting up a subdiv. Using my Damien standard, I'm going to carve in this little mouth crease here. And then accentuate this little crease. We don't want him to look like an old man. He's not like an old dude, but let's make his nose wider, I think. And come out a little bit further. So H polish, Damien standard, and smooth are the three brushes that I'm using. Using the standard brush to kind of pop that out a little bit more. And this crease is just not working. It makes him look like an old man, so maybe I'll subdue that a little bit. Yeah, it's looking better. And then we'll use the snake hook brush to kind of pull in this ridge to make this ridge thicker. See, this is me going full artist mode and getting a little bit nitpicky. Using H polish to kind of clean up these little awkward ridges that are going on. And then using snake hook to accentuate this guy. And then I don't have inflate set to a hotkey, but we'll use the inflate brush to kind of pump the jam on this guy. Using H polish to come back. Okay, so that's already looking a little bit better, I think. both sides just to be safe. Symmetry might have gotten off a little bit over here, so let's recarve some of this in. With symmetry turned off, I'm just cleaning up some of these details. Using the Damien standard again. Cool. And then I'm going to save. Let's look at our concept again and kind of zoom out a little bit. I think I want to drop his shoulder down and maybe move his neck around a little bit, as well as his collar, because that work is spanning across multiple subtools. I think what I'm going to do is switch over to my transpose master. You just click on this guy. It will make the changes in transpose. Okay, so now we're in transpose. I'm going to switch over to my snake hook brush and just kind of start to pull things around a little bit better. Pull his collar up and out. And bring his arm, because this arm is significantly longer now than this arm, so let's try and add some length to this arm to kind of symmetrize this guy a little bit. And just kind of popping those hips out a little bit more. On his chest out. Just a little. Yeah, let's undo that. Okay. Might have made his arm a little bit too long. You can try and fake that by stretching his shoulder this way a little. I'm going to go over to my move topological brush so that we're only moving that specific object. So I'm just going to adjust his collar. Make these guys more pointy. Just some broad changes that we want to make to all of these just before we get it combined into one subtool. Oh, the other thing I noticed too is the back of his collar needed to be pulled up a good amount. Apologize if you hear my little crazy animal children playing happily in the background. Moving the collar up, I'm going to slide this up there and smooth it out because we're getting a little wobbly on some of these edges. We can always do this too when we switch back to our regular Z tool. Okay. Get his collar up a little bit. Looks like we've misshaped our button here just a little bit, so we'll use the snake hook and pull that back into place. Transpose is a really excellent way to just make broad adjustments to the entire model. All subtools combined into one. There's no better way really to be doing that. Okay, so now I'm going to come back over to Z plugin and go to T-pose to send everything back to my original Z tool. Okay, so now everything's been popped over there. One thing I like to do is go over to where transpose made its own Z tool and just hit delete all and just get rid of that guy just to remove all confusion. Like, this is my working Z tool now. I'm going to save this. And because I used Subtool Master, it broke, so I'm going to have to use Save As to do a proper save. I hope that they fix that in the nearest version. So I'm going to version up to version 8, and then I'm going to load version 7 so I can sort of A/B between my changes to see how things are looking. Okay, so if I click between these guys, you can see the changes that I've made. Pretty subtle, but I'm really liking them. I think proportionally they're looking a lot better. So yeah, looking good. And then I wanted to show you guys this other brush that I had discovered called the Curve Alphas. And if we alt left click on the hair to make that the active subtool, right now it's still very blobby. We're getting some detailing in there, but it's still very blobby. If I was to click and drag now on this using this brush, you can see it kind of drags out these interesting little hairs. So let's try and use that. And once you drag these out, you have this little temporary rig, so you can kind of move things into place and still kind of define that shape a little bit. You know, we want these things to kind of connect into each other, so we don't have a bunch of fragile detail. But it gets a little crazy, as you can see. So let's turn on solo mode, get the crown out of the way, and see if we can get some better results. But if we just dragged a few of these, and then just kind of try to move them into place a little bit, I think we'll get some good looking stuff. I mean, if you'd like to, you can browse the web. You can find all kinds of hairbrushes that people have made. There's some interesting like curly hairbrushes. I like to keep everything stock for you guys so that we're all learning on the same version of Zbrush. But there's just a plethora of good, awesome tools out there and tool makers. This guy's interesting because it doesn't really snap along the surface very well. It just kind of like it starts on the surface and then it kind of just goes off to wherever. So okay, trying to add some weird things here to see what we can do. It's kind of interesting. So again, if you just left click off the mesh, then it'll get rid of the little rig, and then we can come in here and like maybe inflate these guys out a little bit while it's masked. So let's just keep drawing some squigglies, kind of like those. So I'm just drawing those, and then just doing a little bit of an inflate. I'm always thinking durability because I got kids. Kids break things. So, I mean, I love these guys. You can hear them right now. They're breaking the peace in the home by yelling and screaming. Oops. Let's try that guy. Looks too much like the neighboring one, so we'll go like this. Yeah. Use a snake hook to kind of push into place, scaling up my brush size a good amount, and then inflating out. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and just with everything unmasked, just do kind of like a broad inflate. And then I'm actually going to hit Control D on my keyboard to kind of get rid of some of that polygonal faceting. And that's cranked our subdivision level super high, so we're going to re-dynamesh this now at 1500 and see what it does. Okay, so now everything's kind of dynameshed together. And you can always still come in with like the Damien standard and kind of just clean some of this stuff up. So I'm just left clicking and dragging, and then alt left clicking and dragging to pop stuff out. Just kind of trying to fill in some of the gaps of the details here. Really sure what's going on right here. Let's try and clean this mess up a little bit. I think the crown's like going to be right there, so you won't even see it, but because I'm an OCD artist, I'm going to deal with it. The other thing to keep in mind too is, what detailing is going to show up at scale. Like if I print this guy at 6 inches and I'm sitting here and just really nitpicking on these details, it's kind of just a waste of your time. So I think a lot of being an artist is just trying to work smarter and trying to realize that it's more important to get something done and to finish something than it is to sit here and nitpick on these details or nitpick the best tools, or I mean so many cool, awesome projects have been sacrificed on the altar of, you know, trying to just figure out the absolute best software to use or the best technique. And the reality is, you just need to get it out in front of people and get it done. So the confidence you're going to build from that is more important than anything else. And that's my Tony Robbins motivational speech for you. Just get it done, man. Get it done. And then you get to learn. Get to learn from your mistakes. Okay, this guy got a little skinny over here, so I'm going to just kind of inflate that guy out a little bit, inflate these guys, so they're all kind of, it's okay that there's going to be holes right there. It's not like we're making molds or casting this in any way, so it's okay to have undercuts. We're just going to 3D print this guy, so it's one of the benefits of that. I mean, if you were to move into mold, and at some point I'll probably do a video on mold making and casting, in maybe doing like a 2-piece mold or something like that, because that's another thing that really fascinates me. And learning how to replicate your models easily and cheaply making molds is a fun thing. So that might be something I'll look into at some point in time, but for now I'm kind of just living in Zbrush and having fun here. So I mean, let me know if that's something that you guys want to learn. You know, learn how to cast in resin and where to get the best supplies and all that fun stuff. So this hair is looking pretty good. I think it's looking better than it was anyway. These guys, the sides, are still looking a little bit suspect, but we'll continue. Let's just keep pushing this a little bit. This guy. Really just pushing these details sometimes to the point where they just look kind of ugly. So they'll show up for you in the resin. Okay, how's that looking? It's looking better, I would say. I'd say that looks better. Maybe the shape needs to be adjusted just a little bit. Pop this guy up a little. You have some of these little side bits right here. All right, cool. I think that's a good improvement. We made some good leaps this go around. I'm gonna save. And let's start designing this fun base. So I'm gonna start with a cylinder. Just come over here to append and just append a cylinder. Gonna scale this guy in Y and kind of drop him down into place. And I want to keep the base centered, so what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to do this fancy trick where I move everything to in place for the base. So I'm going to control, drag a rectangle and mask my base, and come over here and just select all subtools. Just click this top right button, and then I'm going to move him to where I want him. And the reason I do that is so that as I'm working on my base, I can use radial symmetry and things on that. So I'll show you what that means. So let's do a deformation, and we'll do a taper in Y and just kind of taper the base. Scale it up, flatten it. Control D to get rid of the polygonal faceting, and gonna delete lower. Might be just a smidge too big. He might need to be, well, he's pretty centered, I guess. Overall, like the overall piece is fairly centered, even though the board isn't. Let's play around with that a little bit. So we're gonna mask that, turn this guy back on, and see if we can like kind of center him just a little. That's looking better. Okay, so now what I can do is this fun thing called radial symmetry. And I don't think we've done this on any other video yet, but if we come over here to transform and turn on activate symmetry, turn off X, turn on Y, and then turn on this little, click this little R for radial count. Now it's going to give you 8 points right here. And did we actually already lose symmetry somehow? Maybe. If you click on it, let's do this. Our pivot might not have been centered when we initially did our scale. Let's try this. Let's go back. And so now we're good. If we come up here, we're good. We're good at there. Okay, we got off about right here somewhere. So we'll redo the taper, make sure that our symmetry is on, and then redo our subdivisions, Control D about 3 or 4 times, and then delete. And now we're back in symmetry, proper symmetry mode. So now if you come over here, like if you grab the clay build up and you sculpt it, you see you do like, you know, it's gonna do that at 8 different points. So if we crank our radial symmetry to like 32, you can do some fun things with the details of the base, you know. So for this example, I think I'm just gonna mask this. Well, let's say Control D again. In fact, I think I'm just gonna run a Dynamesh and just crank this resolution a little bit to like 500. And then maybe just like mask this out, and you can do this fun thing right here to see if it's gonna work. If you come over here to masking, you go click on auto region, and it'll fill that hole for you. And that's super valuable when you're doing like, you know, scales on a dragon or something, and you want to just fill, you want to draw the outline of the scales and then fill those. That's really valuable. So that's a cool addition. I'm going to sharpen my mask a little bit and then pop this guy up in the Y direction. And then I'm just going to do a smooth, just leaving it masked for now. And I think let's Alt-Tab over to our concept and see what we got going. Looks like we have like a kind of a concrete type thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to get this detailed with it, or maybe, you know, maybe this can just be achieved in the paint. But let's see what we can do, I guess. So one thing we could probably do is, if you come over here to surface and click on noise, it'll bring up this little screen here. And this is all the same navigation right here. So right click to rotate, you know, Alt right click and let go of Alt to zoom in and pan, Alt pan. It's all the same navigation. But you'll see that if you zoom in real close, it's added this really subtle noise. And you can actually adjust the scale of the noise by clicking on this guy up here. And it's kind of looking like a roughness, like a concrete. And we can actually crank this, the strength on it too by dragging this slider. And if you hit OK, it's going to give you, it's still just a preview. It's not actually applied to the mesh just yet. And the way to apply that is just click this button here, apply to mesh. And this is what it looks like. So it kind of gives it this interesting, and if you click on the noise button again, and click apply again, you've kind of just multiplied that effect, and you might have to do it 2 or 3 times to get that to work right. So now this is looking more like a rough kind of concrete. I'm going to drop this down in Y. Oops, we still have all transform all subtools, so we got to drop that down. Just to where the wheels are just like barely touching. And then if we wanted to add like a paint strip or whatever, we can turn off our symmetry, radial symmetry, by hitting X on the keyboard, and then maybe just drag some little strips here. I think I might want to go a little bit wider with those, so I'm just gonna do one strip there, and then I'm gonna do an inverted selection here. I'm gonna snap to my profile view and then get rid of these guys. And then from here, I think I'm gonna do a mesh extract. So subtool, extract, drop my thickness down to like a 0.00 something, extract, it's probably still too thick, 2, extract, and hit accept. Okay, and then from here, it actually already interestingly looks like, if I turn on symmetry, actually I don't need symmetry at all, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna smooth these out just a little bit more, so they're still bumping on them, but let's turn off solo mode and see how they look. So I kind of like that. We might want to add like, you know, some little chips here or something that are kind of coming out of the paint. So they're not such perfect the little lines. And this added thickness here is going to look cool in the print too. It's going to give you something to paint against. So, one thing I think I'm going to do is run a Dynamesh. I'm going to crank my resolution to about 600 or 700 and hit Dynamesh on there. And let's say we wanted to add some holes going through the paint, you know, where things kind of skidded off of it or whatever. Dynamesh here. One thing you can do is you can come over here to like you can use any insert mesh primitive for this, but I'm just going to use a cylinder. So click on one of these guys, go to cylinder, and you can hold Alt, left click and drag, and then it'll drag an inverted cylinder into the mesh. And I want it to cut all the way through the mesh, so I'm going to move this up in Y. I'll click the blue arrow, and then I'm going to just control left click drag to clear my mask, and then control left click drag again, and it's going to Boolean subtract in 3D terms that geometry out of there. So now we've got this interesting little hole, kind of like the paint has just got it, you know, it's getting worn out, or like a rock has been chipped up or something from that. And this is a very common workflow in 3D printing. You're going to be doing a lot of Boolean subtractions and shelling and things like that to make things look right, to make things work right. And like I said, you can use any shape to do that. So we'll just do it again just to cover our bases. But this time I'm going to use this interesting little cylinder here. It's kind of like I don't know what that shape is, but it's just a different shape. Holding Alt, left clicking and dragging, so I drag that out, and then I move it up in Y to make sure it's going to cut all the way through the mesh, and then just clearing my mask, and then clearing the mask again. And it'll just subtract that right out for you. Oops. And then I'll do maybe like just a little cylinder one right here, just a tiny one. And then now we've got that going on. So, and then using the snake hook to kind of make those shapes a little more interesting, a little less polygonal looking. Okay, turning off solo mode. So now we've got some concrete and some stripes in there. And maybe we'll add, let's add another stripe in there. Just add like this guy here. That's already good to go. So come to subtool. Our value should already be set to what we want. So hit extract and hit accept. And then do our same kind of fun stuff here. Smooth that out a little bit. And make sure that you are in Dynamesh mode, which we are not, so crank the resolution to 656 something, hit Dynamesh, and then start kind of just running your Boolean subtractions. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay. Yeah, you can just use a snake hook if you'd like, and you can turn on your Sculptris Pro if you want polygons to be automatically generated for you. Just keep in mind some of these little nicks and dings aren't going to show up when it's printed tiny, so you might want to just really accentuate those a little bit. Okay, so now these stripes are actually two separate subtools, so I'm going to just merge them down. And in fact, I'm just going to merge everything down to the first things first, I think they might still be a little bit too thin, especially in the print, so I'm going to scale those up in Y. And one thing you can actually do, it's actually maintained the top poly groups for us, so if I control shift left click on the blue poly group and then mask that group, and then control shift left click to unhide everything and invert my selection by control left click tapping, I'm going to just like grab the move tool and just pull those up and add some thickness to them. Okay. So now that's really going to show up nicely. All right, cool. So let's take this base here and then merge this all down, and we're going to save and then version up because we're going to start merging everything into one subtool, and there's no going back from that easily. So we're getting into print mode at this point, so be prepared. We're about 30 minutes into the video, so we gotta get cranking on this guy. Okay, let's start by just merging everything. So I'm gonna merge the two shoes together. Merge these pants down. Merge them to the board. Merging the camera, just merging everything. One thing I was looking at with this this crown is I might want to inflate some of this green area out a little bit, just give it some added thickness because I worry about these guys printing okay. So I'm gonna actually just inflate, not too much, but just a little bit, like maybe something like that. And it still looks like a crown. It looks just fine, you know, it's gonna work. But we just added some durability there. So I'm just gonna continue to merge everything down. You could do like merge visible or merge down if you want, but I like to go this route. Whoa, oh, this is our crown that was maintained. One second here, where am I at? Oh, interesting. Okay, so I left it at grid 0 just so we could make the adjustments. So I'm going to Control-Shift left-click on those guys and just delete them all. Modify topology, delete hidden, and then continue to come up here to the very top and just continue to merge this guy down. Get a lot of subtools here. The tie. Actually, I don't think we used that tie, did we? Oh, we did. Okay, I thought we used the bow tie. Sorry, I've been doing this over the course of a month, so I forget where I'm at sometimes. Teeth, even though we didn't need them. And then just keep in mind too, your poly count is probably getting super high right now. So just when you merge stuff down, just be aware that that's happening. Get this guy a collar, some pants, and then we're going to move all the way down to the base. So now everything is one subtool now, and it's going to get a little bit chuggy depending on your computer specs. I'm not sure if I like these little curlies actually. I think first thing first, I'm going to run a Dynamesh and just make sure that, because right now everything it's still its own poly groups and its own separate topology, so I want to combine everything together and just clean up these little wibbly wobblies. So this might take some iterating, so make sure that you save. I would save a new version. Big fan of versioning. And probably crank this guy to around 900 to 1000 and then hit Dynamesh and see what that does for us resolution wise. Just keep in mind too, when you do that, you're going to lose all of your symmetry, your symmetrical modeling abilities. It's going to be just all combined into one. So I know that we're seeing these little jaggies here. Chances are when it's printed, you know, this big, you're not going to see those. But still, I think I might go back and undo and just crank that subdivision or that resolution just a little bit higher, probably something like 1200. Cool. So yeah, we're even still seeing those, you know, 4 screws there, which is cool. Yeah, everything's looking good, I think. Let's just play around with this hair just a little bit more. I mean, I don't want him to look like a Pantene Pro V like model, you know, like a conditioner model. I want him to look like a dude with, you know, he's kind of a tough guy. So just using the Damien standard again, and just going to carve some of this stuff back. Oops. Redynameshing. Using the snake hook to kind of just introduce some scragglies. I'm going to turn on my Sculptris Pro. Sometimes this tool can get pretty heavy depending on what your poly count is. And right now my guy's getting a little bit chuggy, so I'm going to turn that off. Okay. I don't like this guy. He's too fluffy looking. I mean, yeah, if you look at the guy's hair, it's kind of like very much like a rat's nest. Like, it's hard to achieve this kind of look, especially if you're modeling just with thickness, not doing an actual hair sim. Okay. Just gonna refine this ear just a little bit more. And the reason I'm doing my refining right now is because when we get to decimation territory, where we start to de-res our mesh, you lose your sculpting ability once you've done that. You lose your poly count. So you want to do your changes, your final touch-ups, your changes right now before we run our decimation. Okay. And I don't like that there's this kind of like huge gap between his chest and his jacket right here, so we're going to inflate that, kind of inflate things in. And then I'm going to run a Damien Standard to just kind of sharpen this edge. So right now it's looking pretty round. You could do that with all of the collar, sharpen things up. Guys look a little more pointy. I'm going to try let's do an H polish. A little bit of H polish there. Okay. And then again with the Damien Standard, I'm going to pull these little wrinkles out where these buttons are cinching things up. And then I'm going to inflate some of this up here. This little knot, kind of thicken the knot up. And then carve out the collar so it's appearing to kind of pop out. Alright, this is the king of New York. Okay, so just for good measure, I'm going to rerun a Dynamesh. Now this particular character, it would be an interesting character to shell because you need to be able to have holes that can go all the way through down the part and down into the base. And because proportionally, there's nowhere for those holes to really fit. Like this board can't be shelled. It's already kind of the minimum thickness. His ankles are already the minimum thickness. And he's not a very thick character, so I don't think we'd really achieve a ton by shelling this guy. So I don't know if I'm going to do that for this one. But what I am going to do is continue to nitpick on the hair. You know, because that's what I do. And then I'm definitely going to come down here because this base would be a ton of wasted resin. It's so thick. So what I'm going to do is drag a mask along the bottom of that. Actually, oh jeez, sorry. Navigation's freaking out. I was trying to mouse over my recorder. 1 second. Okay, so I think I averted a crisis there for a second. All right, looks like his heel is coming down off the, or up off the board, so I'm gonna use my move topological and try to, if I can, it might have to be an inflate. So this is gonna get kind of ugly. Just grabbing the bottom of the heel and just kind of trying to inflate that so they actually make contact. You could just, you know, mask this like so, and then use your transpose brush to kind of, or tool, just to kind of pull that down. And then I'm going to smooth this little edge out. Again, that's like, it looks a little weird, but let's just do an H polish. We're going to line the edge here, smooth it up. Okay. Alright, so now his heel's making contact, that's good. I think for durability, I mean, this guy's going to be fine. Let's fix this weird looking kind of. I'm going to mask, actually use the mask lasso here for a second and try to get this arm looking a little bit better. I'm going to use the mask pen, and one thing you can do is drop your RGB intensity, and it'll actually drop the mask as you're holding control. Okay, so if I adjust the intensity down and I just left click and drag on my geo, you'll notice that the intensity of the mask is adjusted as well. So I can Control Alt to kind of feather that a little bit. Control Alt to feather this. And it just doesn't, you know, it's not feeling natural to me, so I'm going to invert the selection. So now I have his shoulder area kind of masked, and I'm not going to adjust his face. And then I'm going to just bring his shoulder up so it's kind of like kissing up against his jaw just a little. Just playing around with the shape of this guy because it needs some love. Switching back to the Damien Sander to kind of pull some wrinkles in. A little bit of a bend in that arm. Just looking a little bit better. I'm going to unmask and clean up this area back here, the collar. Kind of an interesting wrinkle going on. Using the H polish and holding Alt to kind of pull that detail out. All right. Back of his ears are looking way weird, so let's use the Damien Sander and kind of carve those details back in. Just clean some of this neck area up. Damien Sander and smooth. It's weird how it kind of tapers out like that. Let's pull it back in. Damien Sander. That's not what necks do. H polish. Okay, I think that's looking a lot better. Let's armpit out back just a little bit. Okay, hitting P on the keyboard to show us some perspective here. And then I want to rotate his head to make it look like he's actually looking at the camera. It's been something that kind of bugs me, so using the mask lasso, and then I accidentally cleared my mask, it's fun. Control mask pen now, using the same technique to kind of feather that edge. I'd rather invert my selection. And then let's add his neck joint. And then I'm going to rotate back just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking better. And then turn his head to be facing the camera. Okay. And his hairs are just still looking a little bit. It looks like he's gone to a salon, had his perm or something. I don't think this guy just got really curly hair naturally. I'm just gonna try and shag this up just a little bit. Alright, cool. Clear our mask, redynamesh, and then we're going to subtract out some of that base. So what we're going to do is come over here to a cylinder. Okay, so turn off solo mode, and let's go make sure our cylinders are active subtool. Gonna just center our pivot, make sure everything's centered, and then scale this guy down and kind of fit this. Hit P on the keyboard to go to the orthographic view. And you can turn on this transparency button to kind of see through things. So the idea here is we're going to hit Control D to subdivide the cylinder a little bit, delete lower, and then come down to deformation and do a taper in the Y direction. Okay. And then I'm going to scale in Y and then scale this into place. So we want our wall thickness to be, around 4 to minimum of 2 millimeters. So you can go pretty thin with it, but already we've cut out a major chunk of waste with that base. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, this gets a little bit tricky. This is a very strict order of operations. Okay, so just be aware of this. Make sure that this subtool that is going to be the subtraction mesh is underneath the subtool you're subtracting from, and then click this little button here, and that's gonna make this subtracted mesh. And then you have to do a few other things. So if you come to polygroups, come down here to group as dynamesh sub and click on group as dynamesh sub, and then you should be good to go. Make sure, triple check that this is in dynamesh mode. So by doing so, you go to geometry and make sure that dynamesh button is orange, and if it's not orange, you're gonna have problems. So this is the exact setup you want to get the subtraction, and then you're just gonna merge down. And then once that's combined, you're going to control left click drag a rectangle, and then it's going to calculate that boolean. And depending on how high res the mesh, it could take a little while to do. Might be sitting here camping out for a minute. Okay, so we're done, and that's subtracted out that guy. So really, the only waste that we're going to have is the size of this guy's head, and it's not going to be that huge. So I think this is pretty much it for now. We're going to need to run a decimation on this as well, because I think if you mouse over, you can see your poly count is about 5.1 million, which is probably a little bit high for your slicing software. So what I'm going to do is version up again. And sometimes it's nice to incorporate like the name of the operation too. So like maybe I'll say Neistat decimated, version 11. So now I know at this stage I'm going to decimate this guy because there's no going back from that. So we'll come up here to Z plugin and go to decimation master and leave it at 20%, all those values, and just hit pre-process current. And I'm going to pause the video because this could take a while. Okay, so now if you look at your mesh, nothing has actually happened yet because we just ran the pre-process. I kind of wish these buttons would just do the same thing, but we'll just hit decimate current now and see what happens. Usually this part of the process is a little bit faster. Okay, so now you can look at the geometry and see an actual difference. And we were at roughly 5 million polygons, and now we've gotten it down to 2 million polygons. And this is workable. It still might be a tad bit high. But for now, I think it's totally fine for what we got going on. So again, my process for scaling now at this point and I prefer to scale after decimation because ZBrush likes to live in tiny scale land, and I think this is the best process, at least for me. So what I'm going to do is just do an append and then a cylinder. I'm going to come over here to the cylinder and come up here to tool and go to import. And then I have some scale cubes that I'll include in the link below that you can just download from my drive. But I have like a 6 foot 2 millimeter cube. There's 6 inch cube, which is the one I like to use. And so for now, it looks like we basically have this character scaled to just over 6 inches, probably 7 or 8. It looks like it's probably 10 or 11 inches tall. So what we want to do is not scale this cube, but just leave this cube as is. Come up here to our top subtool and scale it roughly to what we'd like. And so I would like this guy to be, probably just under 6 inches, maybe 5 inches. And if you hit Shift F to show your polyframe, you can see that the polylines also correspond to that inch. So this is he's just about 5 inches tall at this point. So I'm going to now delete this cube, and now you are good to send this off to your slicing software, Chitubox, whatever. Chitubox is the one that I prefer to use, just because I'm running a Saturn S. But you run your supports on this guy, send it off to print, and it's ready to rock. So maybe I'll do a follow-up video of this guy to show what the print looks like. But as of right now, this is where he's at in 3D land. So again, just let me know what I can do better in the comments below, or maybe a potential idea of something that you'd like me to model to teach you guys how to make. And I think I'm going to move on to maybe doing some slightly more advanced tutorials, maybe some characters that are made for like production, things that you could use in games or in film and whatnot. So again, thank you so much for your support. I finally hit 200 subscribers, which is really fun and exciting. Yeah, so just be sure to comment and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get updates with the newest videos sent to your email. And thanks again for joining me here at Kick Punched. We'll see you in the next one. Hey, sorry I left you hanging there. So I wanted to show you real quickly how to actually export your character. So if I hit Shift F on my keyboard, we need to make sure this is all one poly group. So if you hit Control W a few times just to ensure that everything is just one poly group, then if you come up here to export, you can just come up here and you can export your OBJ as it is. So just wanted to show you guys that before closing out the series.